Hi, I'm Adam Porter, and this is my top 100 all-killer, all-filler board games, by which I mean simple rule sets, short durations, and portable packages, the sort of games you wouldn't normally see on a top 100 list. And now we're down to the top 20. Today is numbers 20 down to 11, so we're at the best of the best. And number 20 is Skulking from Smitspieler. I think it's come out with other publishers as well, and it's very similar to a game from Amigo Spieler called Wizard. Both are based on a traditional card game you could play with a regular pack of playing cards called Oh Hell. But in these games you have differing numbers of tricks in each round of the game. So in Skulking, the first round is 1 trick, the second round is 2 tricks, the third round is 3 tricks, and so on. And at the start of the round, players have to guess how many tricks they're going to win based on the cards they've got in their hand. So everyone puts out a fist, they reveal the number of tricks they think they're going to win by putting out fingers, and then they've got to try and equal that in order to score points. And in Skulking, there are certain cards with special abilities. So the pirate suit, that beats all other cards. The Skulking, though, that'll beat all the pirates. The Skulking beats everything, except for the mermaid, which is normally a low-valued card, but it'll beat the Skulking. And then there's a suit which always loses, and there's one card which can count as the suit that always loses, or count as a pirate. So lots of little special abilities to get your head round. It's got gorgeous artwork to it. As I say, I think there's multiple editions, perhaps they've got different artwork, but I like this Smitspieler one. It sits in the same range as another game we've already talked about, which was Vampire Queen, so it's in the same range as that. Really good trick-taking game, and if you haven't played it, I think this is a must. Number 19 is a miniature version of a much bigger game, so this is Ticket to Ride London. And there are other editions of this, these tiny little boxed versions of Ticket to Ride, but Ticket to Ride London is the one that I've got. So Ticket to Ride is such a simple game, even in its big format, right? It's got 1 page of rules, and basically it is a card game. Although we're laying out these trains to connect up routes, we're doing it through taking cards from a display. You can either take a card blind off the top of the deck, or you can take cards from the open display. Then you're building up sets of cards which you play, and then you can fill out the matching coloured spaces on the board with trains to try and connect up different cities in order to score points. That's the same in the big Ticket to Ride boxes, Ticket to Ride Europe, all the different expansions, but it's the same game in Ticket to Ride London, just on a much, much smaller board. Much smaller. And it plays in about 20 minutes. It's amazing to look at. I've always found Ticket to Ride a really impressive design, but it's particularly impressive that you can take out, you know, practically everything. Take out all the length of it, the duration, make everything much simpler, although the rules stay very similar, just in terms of the size of the sets are smaller. You're playing, you know, 3 cards or 2 cards. You're not playing sets of 6 cards and so on. It just brings the duration right down, and you'd think that would make the game worse. But it doesn't. It doesn't. It's just as good. And it plays in about 15 or 20 minutes. So Ticket to Ride London, fantastic game. If you've got time for the bigger one, well, go for the bigger one. But if you want something portable and quick, Ticket to Ride London is fantastic. Number 18 has a bit of a special place for me because we played it, my wife and I, well, I don't know, my wife particularly played it, but a lot of our guests played it at our wedding, okay? And my wife is German, my family are all English, they can't all speak the same language, but this game brought everybody together, and we had massive 12-player games of Happy Salmon. At the time, Happy Salmon was produced by North Star Games. I think now it's by the company that makes Exploding Kittens. But this is such a simple game. It takes, you know, less than 2 minutes to play. You've got a deck of cards, and you draw the top card, and it'll say fist bump, for example. You've got to give everybody a fist bump. You're looking around and say fist bump, looking for somebody else who's got a fist bump card. If they have, you fist bump, you both throw away your card. Another one says high five. So you're looking for someone saying high five. High five, high five. You're looking for somebody else who's going to give you a high five. If you find it, you give each other a high five, you throw away your card. You're trying to get rid of your cards. There's another one which is Happy Salmon, where you've got to slap the back of each other's forearms like this. That's the Happy Salmon mood. There's one which is called Switcheroo, where you swap places, but each time you're throwing away cards. It's really loud, really frantic, really active. Everyone's running around the table. This is the very definition of a filler game, right? You're not going to play this for long, 2 minutes per game. You'll probably play it 4 or 5 times. Thank you very much, I'm done. Although that said, guests at our wedding played it for hours. Okay, everyone just kept on returning to it. So as I say, got a special place in my heart, but I think this is great as an icebreaker. I think it's fun for children and families. It's just a fast, frantic party type game. Number 17 is Ghost Blitz, and this comes in various different editions from Zoc Verlag. There's Ghost Blitz 1, Ghost Blitz 2, there's a couple of others as well I've seen around that I don't have. And what you have in Ghost Blitz is a series of nice wooden pieces, a ghost, a mouse, an armchair, a bottle, a book, and they're all different colours. You turn over a card and you're looking to grab something that's represented exactly on that card. So if there's a white ghost on that card, you grab the white ghost. If there's a red armchair, you grab the red armchair, right? But if there's a green armchair, then you're not grabbing the armchair because it's not correct. And you're not grabbing anything that's green because that's not correct. So you're looking for the item that is not represented on the card. So perhaps you're looking for the grey mouse because there's nothing on that card which is grey or a mouse. Okay, so it's mind-bending stuff, and as you play it more, then you can add in extra rules that when the mouse appears, you have to do something specific, or when the book appears, you have to say the thing instead of grab the thing, or these sort of rules sneak in there. When you combine different sets, it gets even more complicated. It's one of those games where once you get good at it, there's no point playing it with anybody else, okay, because you're just going to beat them, right? You want to all be at roughly the same ability level, but it is hard, and so it's quite hard to get good at it. It's just really funny and fun. I find it engaging. I find people get into it quickly, and the pieces are just lovely and tactile. It comes in a tiny little box, so it's not expensive. I think it's really good in every... I've played Ghost Blitz 1 and 2. I'd like to play some of the others actually as well. These games are by a designer called Jacques Zymet, who is a Luxembourgish designer who designs a lot of games that I really love, but nobody's heard of Jacques Zymet. And I find his games an inspiration, really. A lot of the Dry Magia range they're all these same sort of things. This speed, reaction, say something before the other players, but you've got to remember what you're supposed to say. It's always that sort of thing with Jacques Zymet. Although sometimes he does something completely different, like the game that we've seen earlier, Grasshopper Poker. So one of my favourite designers, and Ghost Blitz is one of his best games. Number 16 is the third game in this range, right? We've had Vampire Queen, we've had Skull King. So what's left? The next one is a game called Voodoo Prince. Okay, this finishes out that range of 3 games. This is by Reiner Knizia, and actually it's been released in another edition which I haven't played, with slightly altered rules, called Marshmallow Test from Game Right. But the version I'm talking about is Voodoo Prince. This is a trick-taking game again, and in this trick-taking game, it's all about timing. Basically, if you achieve a certain number of tricks in a round, then you bow out of the round, okay? And that's set at the start of each round. The card tells you how many tricks you need to win in order to bow out of the round. But the important thing is, when you leave the round, you score as many points as all the other tricks of all the other players added together. So you want to stay in the round for as long as possible to get the maximum number of points. But if you're the last person in the round, the last person to bow out, you only score the tricks that you've made in front of you, so you get a much lower score. So the whole game is about how long do I stay in? How long do I stay in before, I get out, okay? And you want to get out at just the right point where you get the maximum score, but you don't lose everything by staying in until you're the last player. And that's it. It's very simple trick-taking rules, but just that one little element. And that's what I love so much about it. That's why it ranks so high among all those other trick-taking games that I've talked about. It's because it is just basic trick-taking. There's nothing more to it. 1 point per trick. And you've just got to count the number of tricks. You know how many you've got to get. Nothing complicated about the rule set, following suit, all that stuff that we normally do in tricks. Just that one added element of the timing of getting out of the round. And that's what makes it brilliant. I absolutely love it. Reiner Knizia is the master at simplifying games and just making them so streamlined and yet feel substantial, like there's some depth. Voodoo Prince is an excellent trick-taking game from Schmidt-Spiele. Before Agricola came out in, probably 2008, I'm going to guess. Before that, Uwe Rosenberg, he wasn't known for big games, right? Uwe Rosenberg, who's previously been mentioned on this list as the designer of Bohnanza, the dice game, and also Patchwork. Well, before Agricola, he was known for Bohnanza, right? And that's the next game on the list. Bohnanza is a game of trading, and it's got that system. Bohnanza was the first game, not many games have done this, but this was the first game that really popularized this mechanism where the cards in your hand have to stay in the same order. Think about the game Scout that we've talked about earlier from Oink Games. It's the same thing. In Bohnanza, your cards stay in the same order. And on your turn, you're going to have to plant the beans that are in position number 1 in your hand. Now, you might want to be doing that, planting those beans, because you're trying to create sets of beans in your 2 bean fields that you've got. But you might not want those ones because they don't match the other sets that you've got and you don't want to have to throw stuff away. So you've got the opportunity to trade stuff. And that's where Bohnanza comes alive, is that there's just an open trading thing where you can start offering cards to other players, they're offering you cards back, you're trying to make deals, cards are revealed from the deck at the start of somebody's turn, you can offer those up to the other players in exchange for cards that you can then immediately plant. And you want to see how long do I leave my beans there growing before I harvest. The longer you can keep them there growing without being disturbed by having to put something on there that doesn't match and wipes everything out, if you leave them there for a good long time and you harvest them, you're going to get loads and loads of coins. And the coins are represented by turning the cards over and you've got coins on the back of them. At the end of the game, the player with the most coins wins. It's a game where my initial response to it was to look at the artwork and think, this is terrible artwork. Somebody needs to redo this art. And over the years, I've just grown to love it, and I can't imagine it with any other artwork. And there's loads and loads, tons of expansions, most of which I've never played. There's a 2-player version of Bohnanza the Duel. We've already talked about the dice game. I mean, this is a big brand for Amigo-Spieler, and a lot of it hangs on that slightly ugly, weird artwork and those strange little German puns. The name is a pun. Bohn in German is bean, so Bohnanza is a pun. So it's a weird little game, but it's really engaging and all that frantic negotiation. This is from the sort of the start of the modern board gaming era, right? Back when Catan first came out and these games all exploded onto the scene coming out of Germany, Bohnanza was right there, leading at the vanguard. Okay, and it's still a classic to this day. Plays with a nice big player count as well. I think it goes up to 7 players playing Bohnanza. Fantastic stuff. Stood the test of time, and if you haven't played it yet, don't be put off by the artwork, you'll grow to love it. For number 14, I've amalgamated 2 games, which feels now like a little bit of a cheat because there have been other times where I've kind of had them separate. So the main game here that I'm talking about is Cat Lady. Okay, we'll talk about Cat Lady from AEG. We could have brought Dog Lover in there as well because they're essentially the same game, really. Okay, they've got different designers credited, interestingly, but they do feel like they're very much the same game. Cat Lady is our headline here because that is the simpler version of the game and probably my preferred version of the game, although I'm more of a dog lover than I am a cat man. Okay, so what we do in Cat Lady is you lay out a grid, 3x3 grid of cats and various different items relating to cats. So that might be cat toys, it might be cat food, milk, all these sort of things. And on your turn, you have to select 3 cards, either an entire row or an entire column, and you take them and put them into your display. And if you're taking cats, well, that's great, but you're going to have to feed them. So you're going to have to gather up the food, and different cats want different types of food. So you're then taking cubes that represent the different coloured foods, you're adding them onto your cat cards to make sure they're going to score at the end of the game. There are other cats, I think they're stray cats, or they may be from Rescue Centre. I can't remember the story of the game, an adoption centre or something like that. But you're basically getting these extra cats, right? And they've got set collection sort of bonuses for collecting different coloured cats and things like this. There's also set collection bonuses for having different types of toys, putting costumes on your cats, all this sort of stuff. But basically, we've got a relatively simple set collection exercise like so many other games, but the brilliant thing here is that draft. An entire column or an entire row. When I take the entire column or the entire row, I put a little marker next to it, which means the next player cannot take that row or that column. Okay, so you can't just keep taking from the same place over and over again as the grid refills. I think it's great, simple. I like the artwork on it. It's, again, really, really simple, effective sort of stuff. Dog Lover's a little more complicated because you might not just be taking a row or a column, you might take a sort of L shape, or you might take a diagonal, depending on the various tricks that you've taught your dogs to do. And of course, there's all dog-themed stuff, like you might slot a card under a dog to take it for a walk or something like that. That might add on extra points, and your certain dogs might have certain traits. One of them likes to get dirty, one of them, I don't know, likes to bury things. You've got all that stuff going on. Dog Lover's got a little bit more narrative to it, but also a little bit more complexity. Number 13 is the party game and card game Anomia. Okay, so Anomia is a hilarious game, right, where you've got a central deck of cards. You turn over the top card, and it might say something like, I don't know, ice cream, type of ice cream. Yeah, that's a category, a type of ice cream. The next player then turns over a card and it says movie title. Okay, and if the two cards have the same symbol on them, then you've got to say something that fulfills your opponent's category before they can say something that fulfills your category. So I would have to say a movie title before they say a flavour of ice cream. Okay, but that's only if the symbols match. If they don't match, you don't say anything. And then the next player goes, and the next player goes, and these cards pile up. And if you complete a match, then you take the cards from that pile, which will reveal the cards underneath, which might set off another match. And so other players then are racing to say something before each other. So we get into these frantic chain reactions. The amazing thing is that you can't think of a flavour of ice cream. You can't think of a movie when you're racing against time. So you'll say, Gladiator. Right? Or what's going to happen is you're going to come out with the stupidest example you can think of, and give yourself away as being a fan of, I don't know, some rubbish film, Waterworld, or I don't know, Pink Flamingos or something. Yeah, you're going to say that. Everyone's going, what? What, is that your favourite film? And that's where the game is absolutely hilarious. Okay, this was a big inspiration, along with lots of other similar games. This is the best of them, frankly, but lots of similar games like Jungle Speed or Snorter, where we're spotting for a match and then we're reaching for something or something like that. This was an inspiration for my game Big Bazaar that came out with Blue Orange a few years ago, which I tried to spruce up with lots of lovely graphics and different rule sets and things like this, but it's in a similar sort of vein. So Anomia, I think, has become an absolute classic and an evergreen over the last few years. And if you haven't played it and you like that sort of party game thing, then definitely go out and look this one up. Number 12 was a real surprise to me. This is Rock Paper Wizard from WizKids, which is a twist on Rock Paper Scissors. And it's similar to the game Cash and Guns, if you've ever played that, but this is better. Right? You basically have a series of spells that are laid out on the table, and each one of them corresponds to a hand gesture, right? So we've got all these different gestures laid out on the table. And you're trying to get your playing piece along the track nearest to the treasure, okay? But the spells that you cast on each other might push the playing pieces back or push your piece ahead, or it might steal gold from the other players. So we say Rock, Paper, Wizard, and then we all show our spell. We all do our spell, whatever it is, okay? And whatever it is, we point that at somebody else, and then they take that penalty. Now, if two people point their spells at each other, then that creates this sort of surge, and we end up drawing a random spell from the deck, which is cast instead. Totally chaotic, okay? There's not much skill or strategy here, but it is hilarious, and it's one of those games, if you play it in public, you're going to have everybody watching you coming around your table going, what on earth are they doing? Okay, it's come out with several different new editions of it since. Certainly I've seen a WWE wrestling one. I think perhaps I've seen a Marvel one. There's a number of other licensed versions coming out, but I've got the Rock Paper Wizard, which is actually licensed itself with a Dungeons and Dragons theme, but you wouldn't even notice. I guess it's just about wizards and spells. I think this is absolutely great if you're not going to take it too seriously, if you're happy to play something chaotic and party-like, and just unlike any other game, really. It's just funny and silly. And number 11 is another game that is just unique, okay? There's nothing else like it. This is Wolfgang Warsch's The Mind from NSV. Now, when I was a drama student years ago, when I was an actor for a while, and when I was a drama student, we used to play a game in rehearsals where everyone would shut their eyes in a big circle, and then we would try and count to 100. But anyone could speak, anyone could say the next number, but if two people said the number at the same time, then we had to start over. We had to see how high we could get with counting, right? That was the game. It was a concentration game, a sort of trust game, all that sort of thing, getting in tune with each other. That's what the mind is, right? The mind is this turned into a card game. So you've got a hand of cards with different numbers on them, and the numbers all go in a sequence, so there's never duplicates. And it's cooperative. You just sit there and the other players have got their hand of cards, and someone's going to have to play a card, but they've got to play the lowest card. So we wait, people are thinking, well, I've got like a 19. Somebody might have lower than that, so I'm not going to play 19 in case someone has like a 7 or something. But we've been waiting a while, so the person with the 19 thinks, all right, I'll play. So they play their 19, right? And everyone else looks at each other, and then the next player goes, oh, 21. And the next player plays their 23, 27, 33, and you played your 33, I've got a 28, right? And so we've failed, okay? And it's cooperative. You're trying to succeed at getting rid of all your cards. And in each round, you have different numbers of cards. So it starts out fairly easy to get rid of all the cards, but then as you go through each round, you've got more and more to get through in order to complete that mission. So you get a kind of score like, oh, this game we got to level 3, next game we got to level 4, next game we got to level 7, you know, and there's added things, bonuses you get at the end of the levels, extra lives and things like that. You get these little not shooting stars, they're throwing stars. And if you reveal a throwing star, then everybody in the group can decide together, collectively, do we want to do this? If we do, what we do is we throw away our lowest card, we reveal it, and it gives you a little bit of information about what people have got in their hands. That's it. It probably doesn't sound that good if you haven't played it. Frankly, it's a game that I don't think sells itself, okay? What sells it is playing it, right? You play it with the right group, with people in the right mindset, and it flies, okay? It's unlike any other game. It's the concentration, what I find is hilarious is the blame that goes on. Somebody messes up and suddenly people are like, well, why did you play that? Why did you play? You know, we get into all this frantic back and forth, and we're supposed to be cooperating, right, guys? But it's so easy to mess it up for the whole group. It's a really funny game in a tiny little package, so very, very affordable. It's been a massive hit, massive seller. So yeah, if you haven't played it, try it, The Mind. And so that's it. We've only got 10 to go, and we're going to be looking at them in the next video. But before we leave today, I'm going to be summing up as I normally do and looking at patterns, okay? Which games, which designers am I particularly fond of, which publishers, what themes, what mechanisms, the same sort of thing we've been doing in the previous videos. So if we look at designers to begin with, we've got 4 designers in second place, right? They're tied for second place. It's a tight race for second, okay? Not so tight for first. Second place is held with 3 games apiece. 3 games for Wolfgang Worsch, 3 games for Uwe Rosenberg, 3 games for Bruno Cathala, and 3 games for Haim Shafir. And that means in first place, clearly, Rainer Knizia. He's got 8 games in the list at this point, well out in the lead. They've got a lot to do in that top 10 in order to catch Rainer Knizia. So let's see if one of them can do it. And if we look at publishers, well, Amigo Spieler is still in the lead with 12 games, but Zoc is closing in on them. They've now got 10 games in the list. And Schmidt Spieler had a really good round, and I've combined them with Drei Magier Spieler, okay, because they are the same company. Drei Magier Spieler is a brand within the Schmidt Spieler company, and I think it's unfair to keep them separated. So I'm putting them all in together. And that means they're now making a good showing with 6 games on the list under the Schmidt Spieler brand. NSV follows with 5 games, and then Helvetique is now trailing a little bit with 4 games in the list. And in terms of themes, well, inevitably abstract games, games which are pretty much themeless, are well out in front. There's 20 of these on my list so far, followed by the anthropomorphic animals. There's 12 games with anthropomorphic animals on the list. Can't see them catching the abstract ones in the final 10, but we'll see. And that's followed by fantasy games. There are 7 with a high fantasy setting, and then there are 5 with farming and 5 with spooky themes. And finally, looking at mechanisms, well, trick-taking has gone even further ahead in this list, as you can imagine, with the 10 that we've just seen. Trick-taking, there are now 13 games in my top 100 list. And I hadn't actually counted these, but actually there is a challenger to the trick-taking games, and that's speed games, speed reaction games. I hadn't really thought about that as a category. There are 10 of these on the list, so there is a chance that someone can catch up with trick-taking in our final 10. We'll have to wait and see. And these are followed by push your luck games. There are 9 of those. And then there's another category which I hadn't really considered as a category in its own right, but there's loads of them on the list. There's 8 2-player only games on the list. So if you're frequently playing as a couple, or you've got a one gaming partner and you like to play games that are just for 2, then those are the games that you should be looking at. And so that brings me to a close. I hope you found this 10 interesting, maybe some new ideas, things that you hadn't yet played. I imagine the games that I'm talking about now are probably the more popular games, the sort of stuff you might have heard of, whereas earlier in the list, maybe some of them were a little bit more obscure. But please do come back for the top 10, and we'll see if anybody can actually run ahead of Trick Taking, run ahead of Reiner Knizia, run ahead of Amigo Spieler, and take the win. Okay, I'll see you next time. All the best.